how I funded my startup. This is going to be moderated by Dr. George Whitfield. He's the CEO and founder of FindOurView, which is a phenomenal organization that I encourage everyone to look up. We've got some amazing entrepreneurs as well. And so you can kind of take Philip's words and the kind of theoretical and analytical view of what's happening, and now really get to hear it straight, right, from entrepreneurs who are actually doing it on a day-to-day basis. And so we have some phenomenal entrepreneurs here. But I'll bring up George now to go ahead and introduce these panelists. George, how are you doing this morning?
Great, Scooter. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah. Take it away.
Fantastic. Hey, everybody. Super excited to be here for this panel today. This is going to be awesome. My name is George Whitfield, and I'm your moderator today for this panel that's called How I Funded My Company, From Bootstrapping to Pursuing Venture Capital. Just a quick word on myself. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship, a lecturer in the MIT Sloan School for Management, and also co-founder CEO of a company called FindOurView, which is helping founders find their product market fit faster by turning their customer interviews and conversations into validated needs and profiles using AI. And I'm just super thrilled to welcome our distinguished panelists here. It's such an honor to have each and every one of you here with us. We're joined today by Sherika, Wynter, and Donald Boone. Anj is on the way, and I think he may be joining us just a little bit later, and we'll just dive in with him as he gets here as well. So to start, I'd like to ask each of you, first Sherika and then Don, to give us just a quick introduction to yourself. We'd like to keep it to 1 to 2 minutes or so that we can maximize time for discussions. And if I could ask each of you to please tell us your name, your company title, and what your company does. So Sherika, let's start with you, please.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Sherika Wynter, co-founder and CEO of Thomas & Wynter R&D, who is the parent of Tote. And Tote is a short-term luxury carry company that specializes in products for your 1 to 4 day travel. And we do all our products with vegan leather or sustainable materials. So happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Sherika.
And thanks for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Trying to do my best to emulate Sherika. That was a wonderful introduction for wherever you may be joining. My name is Donald Boone. I'm the co-founder of BoxedUp. We're a B2B marketplace that connects cinematographers to suppliers who own equipment. Think of us a lot like the Airbnb, but for gear. A lot of my previous experience was in the corporate world, later in the technology space at Amazon, specifically Amazon Marketplace. So taking all those learnings that I've had from revolutionary companies like the ones that I've had the opportunity to work for, and really doing it in a different space, the startup space.
Fantastic. That's great. So excited to have both of you here with us. And I also just got a note that we'll be joined in just a few moments by Anj as well. So that said, I think there's some really interesting stories to tell here about how each of us sort of took different approaches to raising funds, to funding our journey from the very beginning through various stages of growth. So we're really looking forward to all of that. Anj, man, great to see you. Welcome. Awesome to see you again. And we're just doing a quick round of intros. Could you lead us with just a quick word on yourself, 1 to 2 minutes, your name, your company, and what the company does?
Yeah, so nice to meet everyone. My name is Anj. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. It's a family of artists. Did engineering at MIT, started working on Rivet, and I'm co-founder there. And what Rivet is an AI-driven CRM platform for artists and content creators that allows them to better understand their fan engagement across platforms and be better at monetizing their most engaged fans.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anj. Great. All right, let's dive in. So, Sherika, can I ask you to lead us off with our first question here? I'd like to ask you about your fundraising journey, which has been quite unique considering that you're in this retail space. Can you tell us just a bit about how you funded your business from the very beginning up until now?
All right, so what kind of conversation we want to have? We want to have a real talk conversation, or we want to have a professional conversation? Okay, cool. If we do a real talk conversation, my fundraiser journey so far has been trash. in that we bootstrapped our company for the first 3.75 years, meaning my co-founder and I went into our own pockets to get the money to get the company going. And we did a round of Republic crowdfunding back in September. And that was the only kind of fundraising we've done so far. We've pitched to different investors and all that stuff, but in the CPG world, the stakes are a little different. People are way more conservative. They need a little bit more information. In so many ways, they don't even believe in me as a leader, as a Black woman and the CEO of an R&D company. And so we've been really using our network and our own personal funds to fund the company thus far.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you for that, Sherika. I think, that's actually how my journey here starts as well, bootstrap. And I think that's a really a common experience that I've seen out there with a lot of founders too. And then just finding a way to craft the appropriate mechanism forward that aligns to your business, the nature of your business. So really appreciate you sharing that. And we're going to dig into that more. So next, I would like actually just to go to Don and ask you also a similar question about what did it take you to sort of get your pre-seed, like the very early stage funds, and then your seed investments. Can you tell us just about your fundraising journey and what the future will require for your company's success regarding fundraising?
Yeah, I'll try to be as transparent and real as well. I mean, I think trash is a very accurate term of the process, and for multiple ways. So I'll say for BoxedUp specifically, we actually skipped the pre-seed stage. We did do what's called a friend and family round. So we did raise some money. My first check was from my mom. Thank you, Mom. She invested $12,000 into the business. But ultimately, prior to, I'll back up a bit and just go through the entire journey. So my first shot at entrepreneurship was back in 2015. I actually spent a fair amount of my 401k, so took a penalty on that in order to try to make that happen out of the gate. And then when that initial product didn't work, I went on to the journey later in life, started working at Amazon. But when we were funding BoxedUp in the early days, it was credit cards. Credit cards were buying the initial amount of inventory. It paid for a lot of the early things. I had to cash out some of my RSUs, restricted stock units at Amazon, to fund sort of the early days of the business. So foundational things, filing for trademarks, buying assets, website, any, AWS, crowd funding credits, pretty much you name it, it was pretty much all bootstrap. We later got to the point where we had enough traction to show something tangible, something to show people who may have an interest in BoxedUp to say, hey, we think we might have something here. Will you come along on this journey with us? So then we reached out to our network of people, and we're thankful and fortunate enough to raise about $200,000 to $300,000 from friends and family. So these are just people who knew how hard I was working on BoxedUp and could sort of help pour into that journey. And then after that, once we had a sort of a foundation of people who believed in us, we had some early customers, we had some early traction. It was then all about crafting a vision for what could sell a potential VC, what would make BoxedUp a company that they thought could have a venture exit, an acquisition or an IPO. And what about our story made us unique, made our team unique, made us the types of people and the type of company that they wanted to invest in. And it was tough. It was tough. It was about 9 months in total. I pitched over about 100 VCs. And it took a long time to get the first yes. But once we got the first yes, we got some traction going, and we were able to close on a seed round about a year ago, $2.3 million in March of 2022. So it was a long journey to get to that point, moving in with my mother-in-law, kind of beg, borrowing, and stealing wherever, not literally stealing, but whatever I could do to kind of keep the lights on until we got to the point where we got some VC funds in.
Wow, what a story and what a journey, I think, going through those different stages. And I'm just struck by all the different people and relationships that really supported and helped you connect to that next level. I think there's so much to be thankful there of, and so many lessons that can be we can learn from and share with others regarding those at different stages of that journey. So, and I think that idea also about transitioning to how to then frame this for investors to take it to that next level is something very interesting as well, and we'll want to dig into some of that more. Anj, I'd like to ask you also a question about your fundraising here. We know that you just raised and closed an impressive seed round. Can you tell us sort of more broadly, what have been the various sources of your capital? And the goal with this question is to really try to classify the different sources of capital and give the attendees an idea about how they might put together a strategy to investors, kind of like Don was just saying. In addition to that, who are some of your investors, if you care to share that as you describe all of that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think similar to my other esteemed panelists here, it's been a difficult journey. I would say lots of challenges. When we started, the very first thing was every penny from internships or jobs that this was my first business like right out of college. So every penny from internships I'd done in college. Also in college, I was like pretty known as like someone that had a bunch of jobs. So like everything that I had also gotten from just on campus jobs, put everything into the business. It was great that it was starting sort of during the pandemic. So it was pretty easy to just be heads down and focus. But the big thing then was essentially, I'd call it my life savings, but I haven't been alive that long, but my life savings and like really reducing my personal burn to like very, very minimal. It was pretty much just rent. It was food, which wasn't a lot, and health insurance, bare bones. If I like break it down really, I wasn't even paying for my phone for a little bit. So you had to like FaceTime audio me or like WhatsApp call me, like very, very clear, like personal burn was super low. And that got me through like very early stages of just ideating, keeping going while we were at MIT on the tail end. Some stuff from Sandbox was very helpful. And then after that, we were able to do Delta V, which was non-dilutive funding. It was $20K, which was really helpful at the time. And then we won one grant, creative arts competition, which was $15K. And those were like kind of the non-dilutive funds that really kind of got us going. And then stretching that for a long time, because it was a while after that, then we got into Techstars Boston. Expensive, it's just another form of capital. It's expensive. Accelerators take a decent chunk of your business, but it was a decent amount of money into the business. And when we could finally focus a little bit more without the fear of like running out of money so quickly, and those were kind of the main sources of capital. And then right after wrapping that program, we wanted to embark on raising. And that was when the market last year basically was just the worst it's ever been. So I went out in April, tried to do it. And also like being in Boston, anything that's kind of creator tag, kind of touching consumers, it's generally just hard to raise in Boston for those types of things. But then also as a Black person, also difficult to raise in general. So it was difficult in general, and then the market was really down. So you can imagine just how difficult it was. So went out in April, tried to do it, and right after our program, which is typically what you do when you do those accelerators, it didn't work out as planned. So we ended up being just failing at raising then, going heads down, and then we were lucky to get into Visible Hands, which is kind of an accelerator plus venture fund. So they run an accelerator, which we did in the fall, and we use that to really spend time heads down building relationships with investors and planning to go out again towards the end of the year with a little bit more traction, and when we were hoping that the market had kind of recovered a little bit. And so then we did that and just closed, like Dr. Whitfield was saying, last month. And that was a mix of angels, venture, actually just angels and venture. So that's all our sources of capital today.
Hey, thank you for sharing that, Anj. And by the way, George is fine. You can just call me George. But I think that this is remarkable because you each tell this unique story. Like Anj just mentioned, coming out of sort of the student ecosystem, various accelerator programs, having the attempt at the raise, the timing It was a tough market going back into the accelerator and then finally landing it with this seed round. Versus, as Don described, the story of starting with, close personal relationships, family, friends, leveraging assets from the previous position, and then having that path to raising venture capital. And then as Sherika has described also, starting out just bootstrapping it. And like I said, that's been my own journey as well. And then going to the crowdfunding route as well. I think each of you have these unique lessons to offer. And I'd like to ask maybe kind of a sort of one of these heavy questions that I think often reveal some key insights for the audience, which is, what's one thing that you wish you knew before you started fundraising that you now know the hard way through experience that you've gained? Sherika, could you start us off with this?
Yeah. I think overall crowdfunding is a good idea. However, I think there's a lot of payments and processes that are not mentioned along that process. So for instance, you have to pay to play, right? You have to pay to get your books cleaned up. No matter how well you clean up your books, they're going to want someone on their side to clean them for you. And then they're going to want a third party to look at the cleanliness of that, right? You're going to have someone do the SEC filing for you, which is another couple thousand, right? If you don't know what's happening. Many entrepreneurs aren't familiar with numbers. I learned really early about numbers. So I was able to negotiate prices down. All in all, to say, you might spend $5,000, $10,000 before you raise $1, right? Which doesn't really help you because you're now depleting what they already say you need a 3-6 month runway, which is unrealistic for most entrepreneurs. Nobody holding on to 3-6 months like that on a regular basis, especially not in CPG. I got inventory to buy, right? And then from there, it's a popularity game. A lot of times you're often offered the platform, but not necessarily the resources that come with the platform. So there's tiered approaches. If you get X, then we promote you to Y. When you get Z, then we promote you here. Then you go back to the pay to play market. And so now you're paying for advertising, you're paying for emails, you're paying to boost your social media. So you're putting all this money before any of it comes in, right? And so most times it runs for 90 days or so. And my 3 to 6 month runway has now become a 2 to 3 month runway, just trying to set this thing up. And so I wish more people understood that crowdfunding, one, is a popularity contest. And two, you probably need to have a year under your belt in order to get through the process and get through the 90 days and then get through the time it takes for them to actually close your account and send you the money. They don't talk about that either, right? And so there is this, for me, we started the conversation in June of the year before, as in that's the first time I heard of our platform. We did not launch until the September of the next year, which means we were in conversation and doing all kind of stuff. I would say we were active probably the little summer before, and we didn't get all of our cash until the end of October. So be prepared for this 12, 14, 15 month run of, I have to kind of keep money on the books. I can't go too low because then you won't qualify anymore. And then I can't do this because then I can't do that. And I have to be ready to spend money on marketing and all these things that you don't prepare yourself for. And so I learned that the hard way, where my business partner and I ended up putting money into actually getting the crowdfunding going, which kind of defeats the whole purpose. And we didn't hit anywhere near the goal that we had in mind. And so had I known that, I probably would have taken Donald's route and done a heavy friends and family, because at the end of the day, it was friends and family that really invested in me. And I lost a percentage of it on the platform and everything they have to do and all that stuff. So just to give you context, if you have a following, use it. If you're new and you're still building, and I'm saying you have less than 10,000 followers on Instagram, you have less than 1,000 followers on LinkedIn, all the social media places, you're not booming, reconsider. I learned that the hard way.
Wow. Yeah. What powerful advice, I think. And I hear sort of leveraging the different support systems, assets that you have to try to make it through those unexpected things, whether that's a friend or a family member or other things that you just had to tap into and trying to anticipate what those are up front, those unexpected things is really hard. So so valuable that you share that with everyone here. Donna, same question for you. I'd like to ask also, what's that one thing that you wish you knew before you started to fundraise that now you know, that you found out afterward?
I got two bonus ones if we get time for it, but the one
Sure.
singular one, it's pretty consistent with Sherika, and you actually mentioned it, just sort of recalling sort of the key points of my journey, George, but relationships. I think what I didn't put as much value in was building relationships with the venture capitalists that we wanted to invest in us. So for context, we had 4 VCs that joined. Slauson and Company led our round. Amazing folks, Collab Capital, Outlander VC, and Black VC in California. So 2 California-based VCs, 2 based in Georgia. And at the end of the day, the thing that got us over the line with all 4 of them was there was a very strong relationship between myself, my co-founder, and the partners there. And at the end of the day, you know, the reason why VC looks the way it does, or funding in general looks the way it does, isn't necessarily because there's sort of necessarily inherent sort of racism or bias sort of, or outward, I should say. It's more that it's sort of built into the process because it really is a relationship business. So you end up, VCs end up investing in people that they like, that they know, that they trust, that they have relationships with. So if you are under networked, it is more difficult for you to raise money from a VC, because if they don't know you, they're not necessarily gonna be excited to cut a large sum amount, a large check into you, if the first time that they're meeting you is when you're asking for money. So I think the very singular thing that I would have done differently was to start to build those relationships in the venture capital space far before I needed the money, so that when the ask came, when the actual structured raise time was there, it was less about who I am as a person, my credibility, and it was more about the business and the metrics and the quality of the team. But when you condense all of it into a fundraising period, and you're trying to both build a relationship and also pitch your business, and also keep your business growing, so that the people that are investing you don't see your business as losing steam throughout the process, because fundraising takes so much time from you. Being very, very intentional about building those relationships and building out that pipeline far before you actually need to raise would have been the best thing that I could have done. So even now that we're starting to prepare for our Series A, I've started to do a lot more relationship building now, even when I'm months away from ever needing to raise. If we do raise, again, especially given the market dynamics, ideally I could stay away from it, but investing in those relationships in the event that I need them at some point in the future.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Don, this is great, because I think this is why conversations like this are so powerful, because what you're doing is revealing to us this process that that exists, and it's repeatable to the extent that now that you know that, you're taking a very different approach in your next fundraise and anticipating that, and sort of staging it out, because you know sort of the priorities and what's going to happen when. So I think that, yeah, such an important takeaway, like understanding the importance of those relationships and how that feeds into the rest of closing those deals. And I think there's so many analogies to that too, like in sales and other things as well. I'm actually really intrigued by that, and I'd actually just like to ask you about those 2 bonuses too, if you could lay that on us, Don, because I think that was really great.
Yeah, no, I think the other big one is generating FOMO. And VCs will say this as well. They're a herd. It's a herd mentality. So anything that you can do to generate some FOMO throughout your fundraising process is absolutely critical. Because so what we did pitch competitions. I pitched Revolt Summit. I got into Google for startups. My fraternity did a pitch competition that we won. So if you could start to give VCs a sense that, like, oh, we might miss out on this if we don't get in now, is extremely helpful. So I'd say that one big bonus was FOMO. The second one I lost when I was kind of going on my rant there, so I apologize. I'll try to come back to it if I can. But FOMO for sure. I think generating FOMO, building those relationships, and then there'll be a third one at some point. I'll come back to it, George. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's huge, Don. I think the FOMO is big, and actually I'm seeing a lot of parallels here too, because Anj talked about having those pitch competitions too, and I think Sherika talked about raising awareness and the importance of marketing in a different type of campaign in crowdfunding. But we can see that type of an activity and creating that awareness and that desire to hop in there and get involved in this movement is powerful, and it fits directly into that process of funding your startup at the appropriate stage once you get that excitement building. Let's go to Anj. Anj, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, as to something that you feel like you knew before, that you didn't know before, that you wish you had, and now that you figured it out sort of the hard way.
Yeah, and I can also add to Donald's bonus with a bonus of mine. So hopefully that'll make up for it. I think the big thing for me that I found is when you go through, so this is kind of like part A, don't get discouraged. So I grew up in Nigeria. All my family's in Nigeria. The friends and family option wasn't really an option for me. And also I didn't really have, I don't have work experience, so my manager or anything, I couldn't raise from anyone really professionally. So you have to just mindset mentally, if that's the situation that you find yourself in, which I assume a lot of people will. The first thing is just understanding that a lot of getting through this process is a mental decision to continue going. So just quick note to do that and be really creative. And I'll talk about a couple of ways in which I did that. So the main thing that is my big takeaway is that in that process, when you're going through it, be pretty, or as much as you can. If you're a solo founder, it's definitely harder. But if you have a team, that helps, as singularly focused as possible on fundraising, and really be open to serendipitous interactions. And that comes from really pouring yourself into the process and accepting that you're focused on this, time blocks for a period, and you will give your full self to that process. And I say that because one of how we ended up getting the biggest check in our pre-seed was someone who said no, introduced us to someone who was a creator, just as a creator, to join our platform potentially. And I'm fundraising, and I really shouldn't be taking that call, at least at that time, but I took it just as a potential user. Let's just see what happens. And then it turns out that person had just started working on a fund. They were really interested in the type of stuff that we do in the creator space, and that ended up being a very fast process to getting them buying in on board, and then leading to basically catalyzing the rest of our round. And if I didn't take that call, we don't close the round. It's as simple as that. And I'd taken a lot of calls like that hadn't worked out, that had been busts, that had been even pure investor calls that didn't go anywhere. And I can't even tell you that I planned that. That just happened because I just kept going through the process, and just every no, I was like, I'll go again. I'm still in the process, and I'll open myself to what can happen. So that's the big thing. And that's with not being discouraged. In terms of also being creative, because I wasn't.
Can I jump in? Because I just wanted to really emphasize back that point that you made too about not getting discouraged, and about also being in the moment and being present, and being open to other possibilities. That is so powerful, because that's a great contrast to this idea of knowing the process, anticipating the process, but then being open to the fact that unexpected things are going to happen, and you made yourself ready for that, and so that you were fully engaged. And then when that moment came, you were able to jump in there and capture a deal that you never would have expected based on the other conversations that you had, but you were preparing for that moment. So I think that's a great one, and I wanted to just add that into this overall picture of there is a process, but also we need to be ready for the unexpected, and enable ourselves to show up and really be able to embrace that when it happens.
Yeah, and to add to that, we definitely were running a process, and I think that's why we were able to take advantage of that opportunity. So I'd say if you're doing things kind of all over the place, it's harder to be opportunistic like that. So I definitely agree with you in terms of being open to things that can happen, but within that process, and that really helped us. So that's the big thing. And then the other thing that I would say is because I didn't have that friends and family kind of background, I needed to be creative. And some of that was, I found out, I thought I was like the cool new founder, didn't have to have LinkedIn, but a lot of investors, like when they're about to take a call, they go look you up. If they can't see stuff, it's just kind of and that goes to relationship building that people are talking about. It's just kind of an unknown, and it makes people scared to like build a relationship or like invest in you as a founder. So started building up my LinkedIn profile, started providing, like, reaching people on that platform and just showing up as a founder, which is completely different from how you might think of yourself as just someone building the business. There's also an outward facing, if you're CEO, that you need to present for your business. So doing that when you're doing your process to make sure that there are not any red flags that you just kind of put in front of investors before you've even gotten on a call that might put you in a bad place. And then the other was, another way I got creative was, one of the checks that we got was, we got an initial no from a fund, made a fun video wearing the fund's merch, posted it on Twitter, and then got a call off of that. And that ended up being like a check from another person at that fund. Like, that was just some of the ways that I was just like continuing to go. And because I didn't have that network, just trying to be creative around the process. So I would say, like, don't discount anything. You never know what's going to happen. You never know like what that serendipitous thing is going to be, but just giving yourself fully to the process and really being creative if you don't have that network. Those are just a couple ways I did it, but that would be the other big takeaway.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think this idea of having a presence, a public presence and image, and being mindful of that too, that certainly can attract more participants that are going to align to the others who are starting to jump on board, and also contribute in some ways to that FOMO that we talked about as well. So it all ties in very nicely.
Oh, I have one more.
Yeah,
I was going to say, send updates. That was another big thing. OneNote became a yes because we kept sending updates. Even if stuff isn't great, people just see that monthly you're making some progress, you're doing something, you're increasing your rate of learning. And the big learning from that is that investors, I guess, invest in, people always say, lines, not dots. And you don't want to give people point situations to make decisions on. You want to give them multiple things that they can kind of connect and see a better story or a story. So sending updates, that's just a tactical thing you should do if you're fundraising.
Thanks for that
100%.
Personally, Ange.
What'd you say?
Needed to hear that. No, I just wanted to say thank you for that. Investing in lines, not dots. I think that's great. So it's a good reminder for me as well to make sure I'm staying on top of my monthly investor updates.
Yeah, and I think it helps you build that relationship as well, even if they're not always like a one-on-one with you. That at least that they get that update, and it feels like they're there, like they can kind of sort of catch up, and it's just something where that then when they jump back in the room with you, now they're kind of up to date, and it just carries it forward from there. So yeah, really powerful advice. I'd like to maybe shift gears a bit and ask a different sort of question now. You all have made it through those steps of investment, and been able to find a way to fund your businesses, and they're growing. I'd like to ask you about, like, what's the one person, whether it's maybe a mentor or an advisor, who has helped you the most, do you think, when you're fundraising? And we could even expand this out to, in addition to people, like if you could also recommend like one resource as well, whether that's like a book or a course or whatever it might be that helped you the most, in addition to that one person. And I'd like to start again with Sherika, if you could give us a sense of who was most impactful and what resource helped you the most.
Honestly, I have a tie, and I hate when that happens. But a friend of mine, she's been on a past KINETIC-CON, Sophia Abdurazak, CEO of Good Find. When I started my fundraising, I had no idea how to even put this budget together. Like, how many people do I really need? I kind of think I know. I know inventory. I know the CPG side of things. I don't know how the breakdown should happen. And one of the things that our friendship is built on is the fact that she's like, you can help me personally, I'll help you in the business. I was like, all right, let's do it, right? And so she has raised millions for her company, and she really sat down and looked at my budget and was just like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. Let me show you how this really works, right? And was able to kind of help me understand, the value of in my head, I was like, oh, I want to show that we're doing customer acquisition and that, we're putting towards inventory and marketing. And she's like, yeah, but you need the people. And in most cases, your budget needs to be like 50% of the people. Like, who's going to do this work, Sherika? It's not just going to be you, right? And kind of pointing out those things to me that I feel you don't really find on the internet. Everybody can tell you how to start a business. Nobody tells you how to go from a crawl to a run. And in so many ways, I felt like I was trying to get up like a simple toddler. And it's like, oh, I'm wobbly walking. I'm not comfortable. So let me just go back and crawl, and just kind of be comfortable where I'm at. And she was really helpful. But it needed a lot of vulnerability from my side to be like, this is what my books look like, or this is what I'm thinking. This is what I don't know. And tapping into her who has been doing this for her to be able to give me some information. And then secondly, a mentor of mine, he's a real estate developer, but he also does a lot of investments himself. And so each time I, even because I said I've pitched before and, things of that nature, he would get on the phone with me and just be like, run those numbers. And he would ask me all these questions like, so what does this mean? And what's this runway? And that's this and then I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, that's not good enough. And we literally would sit on the phone for hours. And he's like, what if it's a small investment, a big investment, a really large investment? What are you willing to give away? Oh, that valuation doesn't even make any sense. Just really like hardcore. This is how they're going to treat you. And I'd rather you break in front of me than you break in front of them. Right. And so the combination of someone showing me how to put it together and then someone actually testing what was put together and helping to kind of like sharpen that, not only help with the crowdfunding, but it's also helping now when we're going into like B2B conversations and all that stuff. But people are like, yo, you really got these numbers. I do. I have been, lack of better term for the Divine Nine, because they don't do such thing, hazed in this situation. And really someone putting me to the test. So shout out to those two people. But then also shout out to me for being vulnerable. I don't think as a Black community, even as women, we're not willing to open our personal books or our financial books for our businesses and have those conversations with people in so many ways, whether it's good or bad. There's a level of shame, a level of, ooh, I shouldn't show nobody. So I'm gonna pat myself on the back for that one.
I'm going to pat you on the back too for that one. That is wonderful, and I think that because that opens up those possibilities, right? And we're a community of entrepreneurs here that we need to be able to have a safe space to interact with and engage each other, and that is so meaningful. And the impact is real. Big shout out to you. And I also love that picture that you paint right there about somebody building you up and the other person kind of like poking holes at it, like a sparring partner. And it's just like the nerd in me wants to also mention like that's actually one of the ways that we improve artificial intelligence systems these days. Like it's called generative adversarial. You got something building up, you got something like attacking it, right? And it works. And so that's a genius move right there. That's beautiful. Yeah, Don, I'd love to ask you the same question about sort of this. Who is that mentor that really stands out? That helped you, and what sort of resource do you think really helped you the most in that process?
Yeah, I've got a lot to choose from, but I think by far the mentor that's been best for us and kind of came from a place that I didn't imagine it would come from. It's a guy named by the name of Jermaine Brown. So he is a VC. He's a former partner at one of the VCs that invested in BoxedUp. And I'd say it probably took us 3 months in total of meeting with him, almost sort of the same way that Sherika's real estate developer mentor would mentor her. He would do the same thing for me. And he just peppered me with questions over and over again. We meet, we talk, we break down customer acquisition. How are you marketing? What channels are you marketing? What personas are you targeting with each channel of your marketing? So just diving into all of these different pieces of the business. And I think throughout that time period, he kind of walked away really impressed. Like, hey, I actually believe in this so much that I also want to personally be involved in seeing your growth and your development. And we become friends, and he continues to sort of mentor us even now. So I think that involvement has been key. He sees it from the entrepreneur side. He used to be an operator, but he also sees it from the VC side as well, and can kind of help communicate the changes in the market environment, the dynamics, what investors are looking for, what profitability is in. So all those undulations that happen inherently in the VC community, he's helped to sort of siphon those learnings down to me in a very instructive way. Resource-wise, by far, I'd say Y Combinator's startup school. So I applied to YC 3 times, got denied all cases. I actually wrote about the denial, kind of how it made me feel in a post that was extremely vulnerable. So just as a side tangent, and if you are vulnerable and open and transparent on LinkedIn, that also helps people, because a lot of people are going through the same thing. So highly encourage you to do that. But what YC does is it's very much remove the fluff from what you're doing, how you're building, and can you really just grow your business month over month? And what are the inputs that are going to require you to grow? And what is the attention to customer feedback that's going to help your product grow? And it really helps you kind of get into the mindset of what you need to do in order to scale a company. And even though I didn't get into the program, a lot of the tools, the talks, the founders that they talk to, the videos that they also display are extremely valuable, and just some of the core things that you'll need to do in order to be successful, a lot of times better than a lot of the feedback that I've gotten from VCs as well. So I'm a huge fan of all things Y Combinator, going through the startup school, doing that, but also watching a lot of their content on YouTube.
Wow. Yeah. I think actually I see 2 lessons there that really jump out at me. One, this idea about the vulnerability itself. This is something that builds trust with others as you're interacting with them. The fact that we can be vulnerable with each other says something about those 2 people and that relationship that they're building. So even being vulnerable with a mentor who later has access to other resources, and you don't know necessarily where it could all lead down the line, but just in that moment, being vulnerable opens you up to those possibilities in the future. And I think the second point being, with that startup school, going back to them, even after having applied 3 times and going through those rejections, but then still going back and saying, I'm coming here because I'm opening myself up to this possibility, and they have something here to offer, and I'm going to explore that. I think that also takes a similar mindset of saying, we're just doing this because we are determined to get through this process, and I'm going to be vulnerable in this moment. I'm going to put myself out on the line, and even if they say no that time, I'm coming back, and you left with something very, very powerful after all that. So that's phenomenal. Ange, I'd like to turn the question to you as well about the mentor that really stood out for you, and any resources that have really helped you along the way.
Yeah, I think similar to just the last point that Donald made, so I think I applied to YC maybe 4 times, got rejected all the times. So that's a very, very relatable point that you made. But still use startup school resources. It's been helpful. And it's a lot of our story is rejection, and sometimes it comes back later. Delta V that we did, we rejected the first time. The creative arts competition we won, we didn't make it past the first round the first time we applied. And a couple investors I already talked about that were no's then yeses. So the very first thing that I think that was helpful that I learned just going on was just have thick skin and just go it's about the process and the learnings, and not any one thing is going to make or break us. So just to add to what Donald was saying, biggest person I would say is probably Adam Klein, who from season 3 and was at MIT. He very early on, that was always my first call for how do we incorporate stuff? How do we talk to investors? Who do we use for legal? Who do we every single question? And he was always give the most direct feedback that I've ever gotten. And that was super helpful. And I'd say in terms of books, there's a book called Oversubscribed by I think Mike Wilner and maybe Max Nassenbaum. Maybe I'm messing the names up, but Oversubscribed: A Founder's Guide to Seed Fundraising. It's very small. It's I don't know if it's up to 100 pages, very easy, quick read, breaks things down tactically. And then there's a whole host of mentors, because we've done a bunch of programs at MIT, at Techstars, at Visible Hands, and I've met a bunch of founders through those who I consistently talk to. And the only reason why I'm not saying anyone is because I won't be able to say everyone. But every one of those founders is conversations that we have where, like, the main thing that I would ever need from them is, yo, can I like pitch you, and like, can you just like tear it apart? And we do that relatively often, and that helps because, one, like, there's no conflict, because like I'm not pitching them for investment, and they can be honest, and they've seen investors react to them as well. And there's a whole host of, and I guess the only benefit, I don't want to say it like that, but one of the main benefits of being in Boston is that the investors here are not going to invest in what I'm doing. So a lot of my investor friends here, I can just talk to and get advice from without ever like thinking I'm burning bridges. So that's been very helpful for getting like candid investor feedback, because they'll never invest in this.
Oh, just a quick point there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's a super valuable one. Pitching people who won't cut you a check is the best practice. It is nothing but getting reps, and it takes out all of the pressure. You get to go through the motions as if you would. You get to answer the silly questions because you know they won't write you a check, but you get to go through that process and hear what the mindset and feedback will be. So practice with those people who you really don't necessarily want. They may be like a tier 3 investor, you know that they may never write a check to you, but then use them as practice. So then when you do have a really, really valuable investor that you want to cut you a check, now you're prepared. So I just wanted to double click on that. That was awesome too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that practice can come from so many different locations too. I mean, whether it's an investor that maybe isn't quite aligned, but there's somebody that you nevertheless have a relationship, or whether it's even other founders who have been doing a lot of pitches. I think those people around you, that support network, matters so much. And that's why it's also so important to just be able to pay that forward too, because that's really where all of this advancement comes from. It's because we, on our journeys, have found people who are willing to jump in there and help us answer those questions, poke those holes, and then build us back up. So we need to keep doing that for each other too. And in the last couple of minutes we've got here, I'd like to, in that note, just to actually ask each of you, what can we do as a community and as an audience here today to help you on the next steps of your journey? So maybe that's something about whether it's either buying your products or telling about the VC raise that you just did, or following you on social media, testing your software, whatever it might be. How can we help you? And I'm looking to Sherika first, and I'm also wondering if you have a product in the room. I'd love to see some of your product there too, or just telling us more about what you do and how we can help.
The one day that I clean the office, George. No, this is one of our products. Oh,
yeah, okay.
This is one of our original products. It's a book bag. We're actually launching the black one. It's up for pre-order right now to be shipped in January. Excuse me, not January. Woo, girl, June. So it'll ship in June. TWTote.com. We make dual insulated, dual compartment lunch bags. We make your favorite toiletry bag that you didn't even know you needed. We make weekenders that are literal weekenders. They are not large bags to be going on the plane. They're over compartment, as well as our book bags. And so please support us. The biggest way is if you work for a company, or hi, my dog is saying hello to everybody right now. If you work for a company, or if your company does gifting or eventing, hit us up. I mean, we're really trying to grow our B2B business in Q2 and Q3. And just, we do a lot of events. A lot of people don't want the plastic bags anymore, the little totes. Put the stuff in a nice little TW tote. Let me know. And of course, follow us on Instagram, twtote.com, Facebook, twtote.com. Anywhere you think of, I've captured TW Tote as far as the socials are concerned. And just honestly, if you're a believer, set a prayer for us. We're right now trying to grow our business, as I said before. We really are looking for some levels of funding, but more so understanding CPG is hard. And so we want to build that network and getting some more partners under our belt. We have Google, we have Capital One, we have Johnny Cochran. We have a couple of nice ones. And so we just want to extend that network. So if you know anybody who needs bulk orders, holla at me. If you know anybody that needs a bag made, we make from scratch, holla at me, and whisper a prayer. and some good thoughts, at least, you know, once a week, once a month, when you think of us. We really appreciate that.
All right, we heard that. Keep believing. Buy that tote. Follow Sherika and TW Tote everywhere. Thank you, Sherika. Don, same question, and just in the last 1 to 2 minutes on this, and how can we help you?
First of all, I want to just say quick thank you to Sherika for being outward with her faith as well. I'm also a believer, so I'll definitely say a prayer for you. You know, none of this would be possible without God. So that goes without saying. But I just wanted to make sure I said that. So thank you for that, Sherika, and opening that door for helping Boxed Up. So 2 big ways. Try Boxed Up is our handle on Instagram. It's our website URL. We're most active on Instagram, so definitely follow us on there. So TRYBOXEDUP. BoxedUp.com wasn't available, so that's why everything is Try Boxed Up. Whoever owns that, they're not using it, but they won't give it back to me, unfortunately, or give it to me, unfortunately. And then the second way is follow me on LinkedIn. I am super active there, not as much recently, but especially now that we're starting to ramp up and starting to build relationships specifically with VCs and production companies. I'm Donald T. Boone on LinkedIn. So active on LinkedIn, and then also follow us on social media. I think those are by far the 2 best ways. And then from there, you'll get ingrained into what we're doing, how we're targeting cinematographers, production companies, and the rest will be natural.
Awesome. We got it, Don. Thank you for that. We will do all of that. Anj, how can we help you, man?
Yeah, I'm so excited that both of you shared your faith. I'm also a believer, so definitely pray for all of us on this panel. I feel like that's the thread between us. I think the most important thing for us is, so we're use Rivet app on every platform except TikTok. We're just Rivet app. So please drop us a follow, amplify, tell a friend to tell a friend to make sure they tell a friend. And if you know any artists, creators, or managers that are interested in what we're doing, we're building the future of fan engagement and communities. They can reach out to us. The website is rivet.app, rivet.app. And just, say a prayer. And those would be the biggest things. So excited to be here. And thanks so much for the opportunity.
We will do all of that. Thank you, Anj. And thank you, everyone. This has been such a pleasure to be in this panel with you. And I just want to say to the audience that there's been some really great wisdom here today. So really reflect on that. And we look forward to hearing what comes out of all of this. So thank you all.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Please give another round of applause wherever you are for all these amazing entrepreneurs. Best of luck. I'm wishing you all the best on everything. It's great to meet some new people and see some familiar faces in the space. I'm using one of Donald's products now, which is great. So thank you there. But this has been wonderful.